Hello. It's delightful to be here, and delightful that you should have come in your own time to this event. I don't know much about you. I know that you're medical students and some foundation doctors, and that you're entirely ignorant of the function of the nuchal ligament and the Achilles tendon. This doesn't bode well at all, given that some of you are quite advanced in your studies. However, I'm not here to talk about those things because I know very little about them either. I'm here to talk in my capacity as an honorary fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatry, which I achieved not through study and wisdom and experience, learning medical know-how, but through lunacy, through being mad. It's the quickest route to the fellowship of the Royal College. I'm also president of Mind, which is the largest mental health charity in the United Kingdom. And I'm very proud to be both of those things. And it is because I happen just to have been born at a time when, as has just been alluded to, the issue of mental health has started to enter the national conversation. And I'm sure you're all aware of the seriousness of mental health in this country, not just through the epidemiology and not just through study, but through your own personal experience, because we're very few of us, more than perhaps 3 people away from someone who suffers from enough mental distress to call it an illness, or at the very least a disorder of a very serious and debilitating kind. And one aspect of that, which you may be more familiar with than I was when I was your age, I'm assuming you're youngish, and that's something I'd quite like to make a film about, because it's less spoken about, although it also is being more spoken about, and I think it's a sign of the extraordinary gravity of the mental health crisis in our country. I would call my film Shh, because it's not much spoken about, and because it is also the initials of an extraordinary worrying trend, and that's self-harm. When I was at school, the phrase didn't exist. I'd never heard of a school child cutting themselves. The idea would be grotesque and horrifying. But I go and speak to schools. Now, you might imagine I go to some schools in Haringey or the East End, for example, where a lot of the children might come from single-parent families, or families where the father or another parent abuses them, or is a drug addict or an alcoholic, and they have perhaps every reason to withdraw from the world, and perhaps you might think, by some logic that we, or I certainly can't understand in the deepest imaginative sense, wish to hurt themselves. Because I have to be frank, I find that a very extraordinary idea. Why are our young people hurting themselves? Why? And if you ask them, and I have, it's a terrifying answer. They cut themselves to numb the pain they feel inside. They're hurting. Our young people are in terrible pain. Now, as people who've chosen medicine, pain and palliative care is a subject quite different and usually associated, of course, with the end game of cancer and with, the sort of horrors of recovering from trauma and burns and things like that, and we're familiar with it. But inner pain is something we're only just really even thinking is worth discussing. And yet it is something of extreme importance. And when I said that I didn't really understand how someone could hurt themselves, could cut themselves, of course I was talking nonsense, because I've tried twice in the past 30 years to kill myself. And that's the ultimate self-harm, of course. And you probably know the bald fact that it is the biggest single killer of young men aged between 20 and 40 in this country. Bigger than cancer, bigger than car crashes, bigger than any disease we can think of. And that's a very disturbing thing. But it also means there is an urgent need for the best and brightest young medical minds to be in this battlefront. I'm far from saying that the war against cardiac disease and cancer is over, but we certainly know how extraordinarily encouraging immunotherapy is in the realm of oncology, and how all kinds of new approaches to the physiology and the pathology of the body are yielding extraordinary dividends through, of course, our study of the genome principally, but also through other remarkable breakthroughs that we've been able to make. I say we, as if I've had anything to do with it, our species at this time. But the real battleground is the brain. You've heard from David Chase just how incredibly exciting our brain is, how extraordinarily hot neuroscience is. Neuroscience is really the most exciting science there is because it's the science also that philosophy is involved in, and also that technology is involved in, with neural nets and neural laces, and the coming day. You saw Deep Blue there, and you heard a little bit about deep learning, machine learning, unsupervised machine learning that has led to the triumph of Go. And it is a fact that the first human being to live to 200 years old has already been born. It might be one of you. It's a strange thought, but I don't think anybody who's really studied it doubts that. Someone who's 4 now may live to another 196 years. It's all tending that way. You'd have to present a strong argument to suggest that it isn't going to be the case. There may be a lot of bio-augmentation, a lot of brain-machine interface, and other such things. And I'm certainly not wanting to suggest that the physical side of our human existence is a solved conundrum. Far from it. But it isn't anything like as exciting as the sciences of cognition and consciousness, and the very idea of happiness. Because if life is to be longer, whether augmented or not, if CRISPR technology allows for the germline to be altered such that all kinds of now terrifying things, the most obvious being, I suppose, spina bifida or motor neuron disease or Huntington's disease and so on, if these are going to be just ironed out of the germline in generation or two, and there's every suspicion that they will be, and if radiology doesn't exist in 10 years' time, and I really wouldn't recommend any one of you, if you have a brother or sister who's thinking of being a radiologist, they won't be radiologists. Machines can read images forever without getting tired or bored or fuzzy or drunk. But you'll be able to train the first generation of AI radiologists, and you'll be free then to do other things. But the one area that's needed in all of this is an area that inquires into the happiness and the health of the human mind, because the human mind is going to be something that is unaltered. It may interface with machines to some extent, but that's further away, I think, than our lifetimes, anyone in this room, in any real sense. But the battle for happiness, satisfaction, contentment, at least for the elimination and the palliation of misery, of discontent, of self-harm. These are battles hugely worth fighting. They're the most exciting in the world. Now, I can understand why a medical student who has spent the last few years coming to terms with the pipes and the valves and the tubes and the flaps and the bones and the 52 in the feet, for heaven's sake, all of them having names, all of them having to be understood, and their processes and the fluid dynamics and the heat exchanges and the endocrinology and the histology and the hematology and all of the ologies that you have to study, all of them physical. Once you've finally mastered them and passed your exams and repeated them, and then now you consider the ward, the hours of labour, the unbelievable work that you're going to have to do. The idea that you have to learn something entirely new, which is to begin to approach a study of the human mind and its diseases and disorders and how it works, and that you're going to have to confront patients who are going to be tiresome and peculiar and inconsistent and embarrassing and aggressive and difficult because their minds are awry, and because the first thing you do, and I speak from terrible experience, if your moods, bipolar disorder is the particular problem that I live with. It's a chronic disorder, as you know. And before you're diagnosed with it, as you grow up having these mood changes, you reach out as any person would to the things that can alter the moods, not knowing that actually it's an illness you have, and those are drugs and alcohol. So a lot of the people you might see as a psychiatrist are likely to be off their heads, or at least to have compromised their sobriety to some extent. So, yeah, there are interpersonal things that you might think make psychiatry, oh my God, I can picture from some hospital at Homerton where street people come in and yell at me, and I have to think about, do I section them under some act of parliament, and is my safety, you know, I can see how that's not going to appeal to you, but I promise you one thing, if you don't choose psychiatry, in 10 years' time, when you're a nephrologist or a urologist, whatever it is, and you're saying, oh, another fucking kidney. Because, you know, mutatis mutandis, all kidneys are just about alike. you will wish, because a lot of doctors do, you will wish that you had committed yourself to the extraordinary excitement of working with the human mind and the human brain. And there's a philosophical conundrum. What is the difference between the mind and the brain? We know that trauma to the brain, whether through stroke or some kind of physical trauma like a car crash or something, can alter personality so radically as to make us feel that our personalities, who we are, the Stephenness of me, the Fryness of me, the you-ness of you, is entirely your wetware and your wiring and your hormones and the things that make your brain work. That's all it is. It seems very reductionist, and yet, of course, it isn't to make it a less surprising and a less extraordinary thing. It makes it all the more extraordinary. This thing, as rightly said, the most profoundly complex entity known in the universe, is something that one can study. And also, I think the curve of improvement over diseases in the last 50 years has been remarkable, the uptick, if you like. But it's only just beginning with mental illness. You're probably aware there's a great deal of controversy about the helpfulness of things like SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the Prozac generation, that some people think that they are compounding the problem. Other people have issues with giving out drugs at all to people under an age of, say, 22, 25. When does the brain lose the plasticity? Is it really right to give these powerful antipsychotics to young people? There are all kinds of ethical issues in psychiatry, of which psychiatrists are deeply aware. And psychiatrists are not the pill pushers that are often badly portrayed in the media. I've never met a psychiatrist who doesn't agree that talk therapy and, where appropriate, pharmaceutical therapy aren't better than either alone, just talk therapy or just pharmaceutical therapy. So it's an adventure because so much more is being discovered about the brain as I speak. And in the next few months, there will be new articles written that will be eye-popping, and there will be new approaches. And the prize is so extraordinary because it's a prize that everybody can understand and relate to, and that is, as I say, increasing the happiness or decreasing the unhappiness, at the very least, of people. And there is no higher prize than that in medicine. Health and happiness, wholeness, are all related as words in Saxon, Anglo-Saxon, and they're a deep part of what medicine is, and it's very easy to lose sight of it and to go for smaller targets. But just once in a while, it's worth your considering why you've chosen medicine and what the most remarkable results you can come up with are. And of course, delivering a baby, curing someone of a disease that may well have killed them just a few years ago, watching them walk on their own, unaided out of a hospital, gives you an extraordinary glow. But I would contend that you consider in your minds all that you know about us as a species and where we're going in the next 100 years and what our problems are that we face, and realize that the life of the mind and the medical adventure of psychiatry is second to none. So thank you for listening, and I hope you do choose psychiatry. Thank you.